Thank you for joining us for our college planning series and for what I think is a topic that doesn't nearly get the time and attention it deserves. Other than healthcare, college is the one expense that seems to grow faster than people can afford, which means that planning should start as soon as possible. As the first child in my family, my parents knew very little about planning for college, so I had to do most of the heavy lifting. Now, there are so many more resources, but that could also be overwhelming. Where do you start? Who do you talk to? What do you do first? Which foot do you put forward? Part 2 of our series will focus on the financial aspects of planning for college. For today, part 1 of our series will focus on the non-financial aspects of planning for college and how parents and students can set themselves up for success. Joining us today are Andrew and Jackie Zoronic with Class 101, Cleveland, Ohio Southeast. We're hoping to get some insight for parents and students preparing themselves for some of the big decisions that lie ahead. So let's talk about college. Andrew, Jackie, welcome. Little introduction for both of you.
Well, we're excited to be helping you out in this process. We hope the parents actually learn a little bit. And if they have questions, they can reach out later. Andrew and I have 4 kids of our own, and that's kind of what led us down this pathway, because we realized there were so many things that we didn't know that we needed to know, and no one told us.
And my bit is, Jackie's covered all the heavy lifting. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to have this presentation.
Well, and we, as I mentioned, over and over again, we talk about you guys a lot in our meetings because there's only so much we can do from the financial side. It's all the other fill in the gap things that you can do and help others with that we don't know enough about because things change so often. So I really appreciate both of you being here. Now let's dig a little deeper. So, first question that I typically have is, what are the biggest misconceptions you hear when helping parents plan for college?
I think I can handle that one. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that parents don't realize is they get their high school student into high school, but they don't realize that it's not a 4-year process. It's actually a 3-year process. So then you have only 3 years to start thinking about, the college and what colleges they're going to. But now you're also adding on all the activities that this generation of kids are involved in. I mean, between sports and band and, maybe they have jobs or whatever, the time goes really fast. I used to never understand what my parents meant when they say, oh, wait till you get older, it goes by so much faster. Well, it does. And by the time they realize it, the student is going into their senior year and they haven't thought about it or started. So the earlier they do this, the better off they're going to be. So the misconception is, oh, I have 4 years, I have time. Time is relative and it goes very quickly with your student.
And if I can just add to that, one of the things is, things have changed. When Jack and I went to college, you generally filled out 1 or 2 applications, you got accepted, and you moved on. The landscape is much more competitive at this point. I can't tell you the number of times, and it's mostly dads, and I don't know what that means, but the dad will come in and say, well, I only took the SAT once. Why do I need to take it more than once? And that's what we try to do, is educate our families on why it's important and ultimately, why it can possibly reduce the cost of college.
Yeah, I think when it comes to planning, usually one person is a little bit more, I guess I'll use the words uptight about it, and the other one is a lot more relaxed about it. So you got to find the balance between which parent is going to push that train forward, right?
Absolutely.
What are the biggest mistakes you see parents make, other than, starting too late?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is assuming that your student only needs to take an ACT or an SAT one time. Our students take multiple ACTs and SATs for practice and in person with the system, but we found that the more they take it, the better they get at it. Okay, so taking only one, you don't understand sometimes the questions, or it's the first time you've taken it and the pressure, you know, if you're anything like me growing up, I was really nervous taking tests. So, you know, now you got to get over the sweats and the shakes and everything else. So the more you take it, you start to relax, you start to get a feel of what the questions are like. You know, I think sometimes you can look at them and say, oh, I bet this is going to be a punctuation question or whatever. So now you're starting to think about the whole process. So I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. And, you know, yeah, there are those rare students that go out, they take the ACT or the SAT and they score perfectly or extremely high and they don't ever take it again. But those are far and few in between. And the competitiveness now that is required for some colleges, you need to maximize your scores.
And if I can just add to it, kind of parlay on the ACT portion or the SAT, a lot of kids will take the test multiple times. It might be once, it might be twice, it might be 3 times, but their score doesn't move. And we say at our office, you don't know what you don't know. So you can keep taking the test over and over again. If you don't make any sort of changes or corrections, you're going to pretty much continue to get the same score. So what we see quite a bit is a student will take the test, they'll take it a second time, they'll get the exact same score and say, well, I guess that's all I'm going to do. It's more about breaking the test down and explaining the nuances of the test. There's strategy involved. Intelligence does matter, but a lot of it is strategy. So for us to be able to work with a student one-on-one, we can explain a lot better how to attack a certain section or what to look for in the test, so on and so forth. So, you know, again, it's more about explaining to the student how to take the test. And then more importantly is some of the errors that they might be making. It could be something simple as punctuation, commas, colons, or semicolons. A lot of that stuff isn't covered in high school anymore. So we're here to kind of take a step back and try to help students understand, again, how to manage the test.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, with tests, as adults, we know that a lot of times taking tests is all about rhythm, right? So the more you take the test, the more you settle into a comfort zone. Can't just wake up one day, walk in, expect to get a good score when you've never done anything like this before. And now, the fact that you can selectively show what scores you want to different schools means that you could pretty much go out there and take it as many times as you need to, and then show the schools which ones matter most to you.
Correct.
So you can set yourselves apart just by doing simple things like that and giving yourself the best shot. So, you know, you mentioned test scores. We hear about grades, extracurriculars. You know, by the time you're a junior or a senior, you have no time to do anything because you're trying to kind of pad the resume a little bit. So between test scores, grades, extracurriculars, what even really matters anymore? I mean, what can help lower costs? What can help set you apart from the pack? And what can potentially help you get admission where you didn't think you could?
Well, we talk about the presentation of the application. So we work pretty diligently with our kids when the Common App opens on August 1st to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. There's a section in there, they ask about 10 activities. We don't want to just simply put swim team, I swim on the swim team. We want to talk about maybe some of the duties that the student has taken on, leadership roles, so that they're, you know, showing the colleges that they are a leader. Colleges love leaders. So it's, again, we call it the presentation application, but we want to make sure that when they give you a list of 10 things, we put down 10 things. When they give you a list of 5 things, you put all 5 things. You don't leave anything blank. There's even a section in there where you can put an extra, we'll call it an optional essay. And when in our world, when it's optional, it means you should probably do it. But the whole idea of this essay is there anything more? You know, we've given us your ACT score, you've given us our GPA, you've given us, you know, your activities. Is there anything more that you want to tell us about, you know, you? There's this essay that you can open up that you can write. Let's say you did an internship at the Cleveland Clinic and you're going into pre-med. Boy, would that look good on a college application. So they can actually do a little bit of a background on what they did at the Cleveland Clinic, why it was important, and how it's going to help them, you know, in college.
But on the same note, if you have a student who stumbled along the way because of COVID or any other issue, that's another place to put that information. We had a student a few years back who her house burned down on Christmas Eve. her father was diagnosed with kidney failure. Her brand new dog was in the house when it burned down. She totally checked out for several months because she was so traumatized. Okay. So her grades faltered, but in the essay she wrote and explained that. So now the college has a reason why this happened versus, oh, this kid just, stopped doing work. So again, it's great if you've done an internship or you've done these things, but it can also help you to explain maybe why you stumbled upon things and now you're coming back. So it's a great use of that essay area.
And for us, it's really about finding the best fit. Not every kid's meant to go to Harvard or Yale. And it's really about trying to align the student academically, socially, because some kids want to be in a big city. Some kids want to be, out in a more of a rural area. So every kid has a different vision on what their perfect college is. We would like to find about 4 or 5 perfect colleges. So no matter what happens, if a student gets accepted to multiple colleges, we want them to struggle to make a decision. You don't want to apply to 2, get denied from one, and just go to the second one. Again, it's about really finding the best fit for the student.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I didn't know. I was when I went to college, I was undecided, and so I thought about doing pharmacy. I looked at Ohio Northern, strong programs, but then that thought comes into your mind that, well, what if I change my mind? Then what, right? Now I'm in, the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and there's what do you do? Where do you go? And I ended up going to Ohio State because I wanted options, right? If I needed to change something, change my mind, there was the ability to do that without having to transfer and create work out of it. And so, a lot of times we tend to focus on location, costs. As students, maybe not so much the cost, but now more so. Students are more in tune with that. And thankfully for us on the financial side, parents are much more open with kids about what it's going to cost. And so the kids, have a little bit more skin in the game when they make that decision. We look at the quality of the programs. Both my brother and my parents wanted us to stay close. I went to Ohio State, my brother went to Carnegie Mellon, so we were both within 2 hours or so. So we look at location, costs, quality of the programs, and what's available. But how much more important is finding a school that's the right fit? When you find 2 or 3 perfect fits, how do you decide? How do you help students decide at that point what is the right fit?
One of the things that we encourage our families to do is there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of tension when we're actually applying to school. Most of the kids we work with think they're not going to get in. Our job is to kind of tamp that down a little bit and assure them that you're probably going to get in. Just, let the process unfold. Once they do get in, we want them to go back. They might have visited a year ago. They might have visited 6 months ago, but we want them to go back to the college campus. And then we strongly recommend pick your top 3 and go back and see those campuses that are on your top 3 list and try to, look at it this way. Do I see myself here? Would I be comfortable here? Pre-COVID, they would actually let you stay overnight at a lot of college campuses so you could see what the students are like, what the dorms are like, what the cafeteria is like, so on and so forth. So that may or may not be coming back, but what we encourage our families to do is make sure even after you've been accepted to go back and take another look. And then if you need to go back again, take another look. And part of the reasons why we do everything proactively, we want our kids to possibly get their acceptances before the end of the year. They don't need to make a decision until May. So they have about 5 months or so, maybe 4 months to really go back and look at the schools. We can talk about AP, does this transfer? We can talk about College Credit Plus, does this transfer? All that stuff's going to add to reducing the cost of going to college. But again, it's really about trying to find the best fit. And then it doesn't always happen this way, but a lot of kids, they just get on a college campus. It's like lightning strikes and they say, man, this is my home. It's happened to our own personal kids. It's happened to students we've worked with, and some other kids, they just get a little nudge. They don't get that, eureka moment. So every kid is different. But at the same time, it's about making sure you know what you're getting into and not applying to a school, never visiting, and they accepted me. So then, I go to that school kind of thing.
As we always say, one of the things is once they've been accepted, the shoe's on the other foot now. The student has now been accepted. The school's not going to rescind their application unless they decide to stop going to high school or, and they flunk out. But now they can go to the school in the aspect and look at it in a different manner. They have a whole different feeling for it because now I've been accepted. Now I can ask those pertinent questions that I wasn't sure about. So if you want to know if there's an internship, opportunities, you can ask the admissions people, well, what kind of internship opportunities do you have for me? You can go directly to the department heads. What's my course level going to look like? So there's a lot of things that you can do once you've been accepted, because when you're applying, you're nervous. You've got to get in first. Now that you're in, it's a different ball game. You are in and you can wait it out because you have until May 1st to make that national decision day. So you don't have to jump on board of a college right away. In fact, we encourage you to wait, go back, and you might find that if you go back and talk to the schools a little bit more, they see that you're actually engaged. They may actually even throw you a little bit of an incentive to come to the school. So
In the
you
way
may
of a
see that.
scholarship.
Yeah. So they may send you more money. If you've gotten a scholarship already, they may add to that along the way.
And that happened with our own daughter. She got a pretty decent scholarship from Merit. We went back and visited. Within about 2 weeks, she got what they called an enhanced Merit scholarship. So they're wanting kids that they know are going to be a good fit. Now that you've been accepted, you could take a little bit different approach, kind of like, why should I come here versus please take me, please take me. So that's one of the biggest things that we're going to suggest to families.
That's a good point. Kind of like, when you get a job offer, right? They've offered you the job. You haven't yet accepted it, but they're committed to you, right? So that's the time when you start to figure out whether it's really going to be a good fit. That's where a lot of the negotiating happens. The fact that a college or a university has offered admission and you're coming back to visit means that you probably still have some decisions to make. And more than likely that school is going to try and do what they can to, push the pendulum in their favor.
Right.
Earlier, you mentioned the Common App. This wasn't something when any of us were applying for college. So for first-time college goers, can you just explain that?
Sure. The Common Application is a application that over 1,000 colleges use. So there's 3 types of applications. There's the Common Application, which over 1,000 colleges use. There's something called a Coalition Application, which approximately 300 to 400 colleges use. And they're usually more in the southern states. And then there's the college-specific application. Most kids around this area tend to use the Common Application or the college-specific application. The Common Application is a series of questions, just basic questions about the student. It's going to have a essay prompt for you to write about, but you're going to choose one of 7 prompts. So you're going to get a choice of what essay you want to write about. And it goes into that Common Application. And then in the Common App itself, there's an area where you put in the colleges you want to apply to, and then they have their college-specific questions that they're going to ask you. But for most part, most of the kids, again, around this area tend to go in through the Common Application or the college-specific, which is, some colleges don't go on the Common Application because you have to pay to be on the Common Application. So some colleges, they'll come on, they'll go off, they'll come on, they'll go off. So we just we go on a college by college basis as to which application to utilize.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Because when, and I only applied to maybe 5 schools, a couple that I felt like I wanted to go to, one because my friend applied to it too, and I thought, what the heck, why not? And then, 2 that were sort of like, if I got in, I might consider like Ivies. I wasn't really, college was sort of non-optional, right? It's just the thing you do after high school, right? There wasn't this thing about taking breaks and, taking a gap year and all this stuff. And so we just started applying to places that we felt like would be worth applying to. So having a common application where it makes sense can make things easier. But at the same time, I feel like, when everybody's filling out the same common application, you have to find a way to set yourself apart from everybody else. And I think that's where the visits come in. That's where the communication with the school comes in, showing them that you're just as interested, instead of, okay, I'm just going to check a few more schools and let the application go to 10 more places just to see what happens, when you have no interest in those schools. We know there's a lot that goes into the planning. You and I have talked about that the sweet spot for you is sort of that sophomore, maybe not quite thinking about school yet, but at least we got to get them in the right mentality. For juniors, what would be an appropriate timeline? And I'll share one of the things that you had shared with us. Now, this is, of course, for a student who's finishing their junior year. So, if you're watching this and you just finished your junior year and you're midway through the summer and you look at this list and you realize, there's a few things on here that I haven't done yet, there's a chance you could be behind. But for those going through their sophomore years, going through their junior years, seems like this is a very good timeline in terms of what to follow. In your minds, what's a good way to approach this?
Well, in looking at the what you have on the screen right now, if they were working with us previously before they are ending their junior year, stuff like, scheduling SAT or ACT tests, we would have kind of done that, much earlier, depending on when a junior comes to us. If they come to us late, let's say right before they walk out in their junior year, we have to take a look at how many times did you take the ACT. If you, have taken it only once, we might want to schedule another test either in the month of June or the month of July, and then possibly as late as September. Some schools will take as late as October, but you can kind of see how the pressure starts to build the later you get down this process. We do work with kids for, test prep. We ask juniors before they walk out of the door their junior year to please ask for letters of recommendation. You don't want to wait until the start of your senior year when every other kid's asking the teachers and there's this line out the door. Teachers get frustrated because they have limited time with their school schedule and stuff like that. So the sooner you can ask the teacher, they appreciate it, because if they could spend some time during the summer writing some of these recommendations, it would really, help out. So even if you're a junior coming to us now, we would ask that you request those letters of recommendation before school starts in August. And that way the teacher, if they so desire, they can start, kind of working on it. The other thing that we're looking at is the resume. There's an academic resume that we use to kind of help colleges see exactly what the kid has done while he's been in high school. It's more than just being a captain of the football team. There's other things you can do, like in community service and what have you. Golf outings are all summer long. You can volunteer for golf outings. And then like our juniors right now have already started their essays, and we had an essay workshop earlier this year. So most, again, students wait what we would say was kind of late at the start of their senior year to start writing the essays. So the sooner you can start that and get that out of the way, we already know what the prompts are. You're going to pretty much write the same essay now that you would have written probably in the fall. So why don't we just get it done sooner? And then the last part of that puzzle is make sure that you're visiting colleges, because again, kids are busy. They have a lot of athletic responsibilities or jobs or what have you. So we want to make sure that kids are seeing colleges, and summer seems to be a pretty good time to, do that. And so it's kind of a fast track for juniors. We would like if we could get students as early as the sophomore, even freshman. We can do a lot of this stuff, so it's not like all at once. It's more in small bites. Visiting colleges, you don't have to do it just in the 3 months of summer. You could have done it during spring break. You could have done it, in a fall break or something like that. So there's time to do other things. But for this particular roadmap, again, we can work with juniors and just get them through the process. So when the Common App does open, they can start, they can be ready to start applying to college.
And the other thing is that Andrew touched on, the sooner they start with us, the better, because as a freshman in sophomore, we can start developing their activities. We can start making suggestions for them to get involved. There's things that certain students can only do, like there's a program that's called Hobie out there that only sophomores going into their junior year are allowed to participate in. So if they come to us early, we can make that recommendation and get them involved in that. It's a nationally known program. There are other things. If they want to go to pharmacy camp, we can find a pharmacy camp, because it's better for you to find out now whether you like a particular career versus going into college and starting there and going, oh, that's not what I thought it was. So again, if you come to us early enough, we can start developing a lot of these things along the way and help you, so that by the time you are a senior, you're not rushing to try and find that one chicken barbecue that you could volunteer at, or that one golf outing. We've developed it enough that you've got some very good, credible things on your resume for the colleges to look at.
So what I'm hearing you saying is, regardless of when you start planning, there's a set list that you have to work your way through that's going to set you up for success. What you first have to decide is whether you want to do that in this much time or this much time, right?
Correct.
In some cases, you don't really have an option. You know, you mentioned the student earlier that just had life hand her, couple bad hands, and you just deal with it as best you can, but at least you can explain that. So,
but to put this in terms that you'll understand, you don't start putting money into an IRA the year that you retire. So
that's right.
It's the same kind of concept. It's just, there's just not enough time. So that's why it is important to start early.
Yeah, and that's the same thing we tell clients, as we're upfront with people, that there is a point in time where it's too late to save or plan for retirement, right? If you're calling me saying I'm retiring this year, what do I do next? We can't go back in time. So let's just hope that you have everything in place to get you where you need to go for the rest of your life. You mentioned, clubs and extracurriculars, things like that, the academic resume. And, I was not captain of the football team, president of the math club. Yes. Definitely not anywhere near the top of the food chain when it came to sports. What are some things that students can do to better prepare themselves for the decisions that lie ahead? Not necessarily the resume piece of it, but what's the mindset? What are the things that they should start to be thinking about to better prepare themselves?
Well, Jackie kind of touched on it just previously about, summer camps. A lot of kids have heard of, something that they've seen the pharmacy, but they really don't know what a pharmacist does. They've heard of engineering, but they really don't know the different aspects of engineering, civil, chemical, mechanical. If we can get their mindset, if you would, start thinking about their future, there's a couple of things that we can do. Is we actually give what's called a DISC profile, which will kind of give us an idea on what their personality is like. 50% of people hate their jobs because they are having to adapt. They're not in their natural state. They're in like an adaptive state. And those are the people that hate their jobs. We don't want that to happen. The same test type, the same time we give them a test, what's called an O-Net, which sort of tests their interests. And our goal is to take their personality and take their interests and kind of find some common ground, so that it's not only something that fits their personality, but it's something that also fits their interest. That all being said, engineering is a great example. There's an engineering camp a stone's throw from here up in Newberry at the ASM building, where they spend a week with the kids. And even though if you live in Solon or Bainbridge or wherever you live, they will still have the kids stay at the camp. Part of the reasons is you're around people, like-minded people, and you're kind of going to see what your competition is like here locally, but similar to when you get to college. So you want to kind of see what kind of kids are in engineering. And then with that same program, they sort of teach you the different aspects of engineering. So for us, the time in high school is about discovery. What do you want to do? What are you thinking about? Do you think that fits, your personality? Does it fit your interest? And all that other stuff. The other thing that you want to tell the college when you apply, I just didn't fall out of bed, bump my head and decide, I want to be in musical theater. So you want to have some experience or background that you can put on your resume that says, I did the school play, I was the lead 3 times, or, whatever it is. So you mentioned it earlier, and I'll go back to it. Applying to college is a lot like applying for a job. You want to kind of show some thought process to, what you've been doing and why it matters and how it'll help you be successful in college. Colleges don't want you to sign up, show up the first semester, flunk out and leave. They want kids to be successful. So they're going to spend a lot of time making sure that the student is a good fit. But then your job as a student is to try to figure out, what do I want to do? What do I like to do? And it's, again, about sort of getting yourself out there and making sure that, you're on the right track.
Yeah, and it's, what you expect going in can be very different than what you get out of it and what actually happens. My roommate freshman year went in as an aerospace engineer, and I thought, oh, how cool. I could learn something and maybe I'll pick something up along the way. And that's kind of cool. I like to be able to tell people my roommate does aerospace, right? So first day of class comes, he comes back from class, and I asked him, so how was the class? He said, nope, not doing that. So, what you think you want to do, and like you said, you just fall out of bed and bump your head and, come up with what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You figure out what you want to do by crossing things off the list. Funny story. When I started Ohio State, I had just come back from India. And, all my cousins are all ahead of me and smart and all this stuff. And so I came back home and I said to myself, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to make them so proud of me. And I took this class it was a math class. It was basically on logic. The first day, the teacher proved that 0 equals 1. And he said, okay, who's in? And I was like, I don't even understand what happened, but sure, I'm in. My first test, okay, this is the first test I've ever taken in college. It was out of 120 points. Guess what I got?
Oh God, I don't even, do I go with the really, really bright, or do I go with not so bright? You go.
60?
I got a 6.
Oh,
6 out of 120.
Oh, that hurts.
Now, granted, 2 people got 5s and they, dropped out of the class. So, who's the smart one? I don't know I don't know who at that point, but, you go into school having certain expectations of what you think is going to happen, how and I thought, okay, math was easy for me. This is another math class. Why not? Right. And then reality sets in. And so I think picking the right program, not just, hey, I think everybody tells me I'll be good at this, so this is what I think I should do. Try and be purposeful about what you're doing, even if you're not sure. Colleges want to know that you want to be there, right? And want them to be the ones that help you figure out what to do. And so, you mentioned student athletes, musicians. How does planning for college differ for students focused on sports or specific interests, music, arts, or otherwise?
Well, that we consider like part of our extended package, because that takes a lot of work. There are kids that want to go into the military. That's just not a 6 months process. You've got to do a lot of things to set yourself up to go into the military. Same thing with sports. Our philosophy, personally, for anyone that's got an athlete that thinks they're going to go pro and do all these wonderful things, God bless you if you get there. But that area is such a small percent of your society. We focus on the academics. Let's find a college that you love that maybe you can play the sport at, versus I'm going to follow the money. And you get to a college and you go, why am I here? I don't like this school. There is nothing about it here. I can't tell you how many people we've come in contact with or dealt with that pick a school because they're following the money and they transfer the first year or the first semester because, they really didn't take a hard look at the college itself. They were just following that career option. And the other thing you have to ask yourself is, am I going to be a professional football player, or am I going to be a professional basketball player? there are far and few of those here in this world. So what is going to set you apart to make you that? I would rather you go find your academic career. And then if you're lucky enough to go farther in your sport, great. But there are other options out there for people who love their sports. There are club sports, there's intramural sports, so again, we focus more on the academic, the musical portion of it. That's a hard road and we will help you with it. But again, that's a kind of an extended package because there's a lot to it. There are things that you have to do to set yourself up for those programs. And it's not just about getting into the program. You have to get accepted to the college before you get accepted to the program on many cases. So there's different things, creating portfolios. If you're going into art or something, you have to be able to create a portfolio. So we help you do all that, but it's a process. It's a little bit more extensive of a process.
And then going back to sports, since you asked us a question, we'll ask you a question. What % of student athletes do you think get a full ride scholarship to college?
4.
It's actually close. It's 2 to 3%.
Okay.
So everyone's got this idea that all those kids running around on Saturday afternoon playing football are all going to college for free. That's not necessarily true. So athletic scholarships can help, but again, like Jackie said, we would rather you find a school that you like, that you can play your sport at, and that, to me, that's going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, and we talked about this recently. You may think you're the greatest player on the planet and believe that you're going to make it. Believing is one thing, but you still have to have doors open for you along the way. You still have to have a backup plan. When you get to the college level, you're talking about athletes that were also the top of their class and the top of their division. So it only gets harder from here. And so having academics to fall back on is something I feel like sometimes you really just have to drill it into their head. I'm not going to make it, but in the case, if I screw up and do make it, great. If things go as planned and I end up, falling out of sports somehow, some way, for whatever reason, at least to have something to do.
Which injury comes up, someone tears their ACL, the college is going to say next man up. They're not going to wait for you to recover unless obviously you're the top recruit. Those kids, kind of fall by the wayside. So we just want to make sure that if they don't graduate in 4 years is another thing. Will they honor their scholarship for the remaining time so that they can get their degree? Typically, unless you're redshirted, you got your 4 years and then you're out. In a Division I program, it's a full-time job. If you're not traveling, practicing, lifting weights, you might get in class, occasionally, but it's a tough road just to be able to, get through college with some kind of athletics, but then to try to graduate in 4 years, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, that's where priority, having good priorities sets in and having good balance. With, especially coming through COVID, what a terrible time to be in school and have to try and learn something along the way.
Yeah.
With more and more online options, what do you think will be the future of the college experience?
I think just with with the pandemic that we just been through, I just feel that most people are more comfortable in an in-person setting. Obviously, online colleges have popped up, but at the end of the day, we tend to be a little bit old school. So for example, if a student was to join us to do ACT test prep, we don't do it strictly online. A little bit of our stuff is done online. A lot of it is done in person. So we do more of what we'll call, a hybrid portion of the ACT test prep. But going back to college itself, everyone's got their own opinion of what it was like. I would have to say overall, with most of the kids we've talked to, the whole online experience was not a positive experience. And I think if you talk to teachers in high school, I don't think anyone there liked it. So, there might be a use for it on a small percentage, but, again, I feel as if we're starting to go back to what we had prior to, COVID. And that includes something we haven't talked about, test optional colleges are starting to go away from that. They're starting to require students to take the ACT or SAT again. So there's a lot of things that maybe were, and that's why this business is kind of important. That's what we do, is we stay on top of these changes. So as things start to change and we learn a little bit more, the test optional thing was just something that just came out of the blue. You know, most people didn't know what it was. They assumed that meant you didn't have to give your scores, but they didn't know all the details. So there's different strategies that we'll utilize with our families as we go through the process. But, you know, if nothing else, the pandemic has taught us that, you know, normal is not always normal. So we're just going to have to roll with it and pivot and do those kind of things. And that's kind of, you know, what we do with each and every one of our families.
Well, and I think, you know, when the pandemic hit, the kids were really excited because they got to get out of school. You know, everybody was, oh, we're out of school. Well, then we were out of school and we were still out of school. And in fact, we were just laughing with some of our students the other day as we were talking about how they spent so much time out of school. Then they wanted to get back to school. They couldn't wait to get back to school. Now that then summer came and now they're back, you know, they're going back to school again. They're like, I don't want to go back to school again. So now, I mean, there's constant, but every one of them will tell you they did not learn what they felt they should have learned if they're not in person. It's too easy to turn your computer on and not have your face on the camera and walk away from it and really not be paying attention. So they aren't held as accountable if it's not in person. And we believe, I'm a firm believer that our kids' ACT scores and SAT scores go up when we're in person. And we've seen great strides in person. Go online, it's not nearly as successful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I liked the college experience. Most people do. They're the best days of our lives, right? How can they be the best days of your lives if you're sitting at home and looking at college on a screen? And so the staying at school, it really gives you a taste of independence and what it truly means. Because, you know, when I got my terrible grade in math that first year, that first test, I was pretty sure the teacher was going to make me go and, you know, the professor was going to make me go home and make my mom or dad sign my test that I shared it with them. And he was like, nope, that's your problem. Like, if you want to, you know, this is the real world, kid. You're either going to bounce back from this or you're going to do something different, right? You got to decide what type of person you want to be. And me being mostly bullheaded at the time, I was like, fine, bring it on. And, you know, that was probably a dumb decision, but, you know, you learn a lot about yourself by being away. And so I think, and I'm hoping that even, you know, my kids who are both under 5 right now, that by the time college comes around for them, that, you know, in-person learning will still be a big thing.
And on a side note, I guess on a personal note, for me, you know, I had 2 years of calculus. Like you, I sat there the first week and I says, wow, what just hit me? And, you know, as important as academics are, for me, my college experience was how to deal with people, how to deal with situations. I remember vividly my freshman year, a class being canceled. First thing I wanted to do was call my parents. And I started thinking about, what are my parents going to do? So you have to start learning how to deal with these little bumps in the road, you know, yourself. And again, for me personally, that was really what college was. I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to clean, and you have to learn how to get along with people. You live with the same people for the last, you know, 18 years. This is completely different. They're going to throw you in a room with some stranger from who knows where, and you're just going to have to get along. So I think it teaches you a lot about life. So again, not to discount the academics portion of it, but I just think the social part, again, learning how to deal with people in different situations, I think is just as important as, you know, calculus, if you would.
Yeah, and I came out of my shell my freshman year because I think I met the right types of people to help me be kind of who I thought I wanted to be, not necessarily who I've always been at that point. And you don't really get to experience the diversity of people until you're stuck living with them, you know, going to class with them, having lunch and dinners with them, and, you know, your parents and your family who you've spent every, you know, waking moment with for the past 18 years, you don't really see them as often. And so it allows you to be probably who you were meant to be and not necessarily who you were expected to be. for you guys, having seen 4 kids kind of go through this and, hundreds of students, what do you love most about what you do?
I think for me, it's the variety. I would get bored if every kid was the same. We have our own 4 kids, each room's different. And then you multiply that times 100 or 200 or 300 kids. It's really just fascinating to be on this side watching these kids. The other thing that we truly enjoy, and I don't want to speak for Jackie, but when you see a freshman or a sophomore come in, they're not really sure about themselves. They're not exactly, they just don't have the swagger that they may develop eventually. But then you start seeing their ACT scores go up. You see their GPAs going up. They'll go to a camp that they know, yes, I want to go in the pharmacy or whatever. It's really makes, for us, it's about making a difference within the family. So a kid walks in, he's not sure about himself, and he just doesn't think anyone's going to accept him. And then as he starts to go through the process with us, his shoulders get back and he starts walking with a little more strut. And that, for us, at least for me, that is one of the best things, to watch a kid start as a freshman, walk out as a senior, and he looks back at us and says, yeah, I got this.
I would have to concur. The kids, it's so funny especially when a freshman comes in, mom's driving them, they're sitting in the parking lot waiting for the kids to get out and everything else. But then the first time they drove, we had twins, and the first time they drove, I watched them pull into our parking lot, and I'm like, do you think they're going to stop, or are they going to come all the way through the building? So you're watching them grow and become young adults, and then they bring their boyfriend in one time, and you're like, oh my God, my baby just grew up. They're dating. So you get to see them progress along the way. And then when they start getting these scores and they're like, yeah, I can do this. I'm cool, and they actually have conversations with you that are fairly intelligible, and they don't use the slang that they're used to using with all their friends. It's just fun. I mean, we go home at night and sometimes we'll go, oh my God, did you hear what they had to say or how they spoke or whatever? It's exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we've all heard of senioritis. There's definitely a senior swagger.
Yeah.
Whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, when you're the small fish in the pond, you definitely walk a little bit quieter. You don't draw too much attention. The sophomores are, not the smallest anymore, but they're certainly, not in the big pond anymore. Juniors, you get to feel a little bit bigger than you probably are. And seniors, you're on top of the world. Yeah. Nothing can knock you off that mountain. And then you go to college and it kind of all starts again, right? Yep. So it's probably very fulfilling to see students kind of move through that, especially because they're evolving, right? And what they think about the world and how they think about themselves. I could see that being very, very exciting. The question is, how are you guys going to retire, right? When all these, more and more kids needing help. I feel like you better enjoy what you're doing.
And in an odd sort of way, we kind of adopt these kids as if they're our own. We like I say, we have enough. We have 4, so that's good enough for us. But these kids, once you are able to meet with them on a regular basis, they just become one of the family. And it's just, one of the biggest thrills we get is, we get invited to their graduation party. And that's in itself, again, it's that final goodbye, kind of thing. And it's just, I don't know, I wouldn't replace this for anything. We're very blessed that we get to do what we get to do. I don't look at it as a job. It's just a wonderful opportunity that we just both love.
That's fantastic. That's what you hope for, right? You don't know what you're going to end up doing in life, but you hope you find something that you can do gracefully. You can do something that you want to do, and something that you enjoy every day, and it gets you excited about waking up. We've covered a lot of ground. I appreciate, your insights and kind of walking us through the mindset of what parents and students should be doing to kind of prepare themselves for those college decisions. Any final comments? And, what's a good referral for you?
Well, a good referral is anyone with a student.
I just, and again, I don't want to over talk about this, but the sooner you start, the better. Yes. And if you don't start with us, either start the process one way, shape, or another, because waiting until the start of your senior year I'm just telling you, I don't care if it's with us or not. It doesn't matter. It's too late.
The most important thing is to get the kids going. Again, whether it's with us or with someone else, start planning now because it will go fast and you're going to wake up and realize they're all grown up. So you want to start them on a slow process because it's going to come quick to them. So whoever they're working with, no matter what, just get them on the campuses, get them taking ACTs, get them doing all these things that are only going to help them be successful and not feel the pressure going forward.
Yeah, tomorrow has a funny way of becoming today, right?
Yep.
And so we have to be prepared and make today count. So I appreciate both of you for being here. As a financial advisor, we pride ourselves in helping our clients no matter what life throws at them, especially if that means relying on other experts to fill in any gaps. While we're very familiar with the financial side of college planning, I appreciate both of you for helping educate many of us who thought planning for college only starts junior year, when they start talking about it, when their friends start talking about it. And knowing enough about life at this point, we know that the sooner you start, the better. Part 2 of our series, I got into college, now what? We'll focus on the financial aspects of planning for college. And in college, as in life, preparation will set you apart from the pack. Thank you for joining us.